Editor-in-Chief of the Federalist, Mollie Hemingway. Mollie, it's good to see you. Okay, we want to talk to you more about the story we broke last night. The Hill reporting top Democrats like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer silencing fellow Democrats, silencing their party. It's now taboo for Democrats to talk about President Biden's age. When ABC, NBC polls, Mollie, majority of Democrat voters say he's too old to run again. I think it's something like 69% of Democrat voters in the ABC poll, and 54% of the NBC poll say he's too old. Voters also think Trump is too old, too, but they're really zooming in hard, Democrats are, on the president's age. But the top leaders are saying it's taboo to talk about it?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work very well for them because people are witnessing every day. You know, it's not the age so much as the mental decline or the general decline that people can witness every single day that they hear their president speaking or any kind of reports that come out about the struggles that he's having in, just with doing his job. But if you don't talk about the age, you're going to be talking about his policy decisions, which are even less popular than his age.
Yeah, I mean, there are 8.9 million illegal border crossers, nearly 1,500 terrorists caught on his watch since he was elected. You know, let's get your reaction to the top-down rhetoric from Senator Chuck Schumer. You're also going to hear the press secretary, and then you're going to listen to President Biden here. Watch this.
I talk to President Biden, regularly. Sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
The characterization, the way that report was characterized, was not just me saying this. Legal experts on both sides said it was flatly wrong.
And the way it works is we supply Ukraine with military equipment from our stockpiles. And then we spend our money replenishing those stockpiles so our military has access to them. Stockpiles that are made right here in America by American workers. Oh, may God protect our speakers, and I promise I'll come back and answer questions later.
God protect the speaker. Right-wing propaganda. It's illegal to talk about the president's age. Your reaction, Mollie?
Yeah, well, if Chuck Schumer says that he has seen President Biden speak with focus and that his mental acuity is fine, there should be some video evidence of that. That's not what we're getting day in and day out. We see videos where he's stumbling to remember names and dates. And it's not just right-wing propaganda, because, of course, the special counsel report in trying to help Joe Biden avoid accountability for his mishandling of classified information, that special counsel said that President Biden was having trouble remembering things, not just in his interview with the special counsel, but all the way back to 2017 when he was doing taped interviews with his ghostwriter. And the thing that's important about that is, in 2017, in interviews with his ghostwriter, he had no incentive to have a bad memory. So if he was struggling with memory all the way back then, we kind of understand why we're seeing so many troubles that he's having right now.
And isn't it reasonable to say, okay, if everything's fine, then just release the special counsel Robert Hur's transcript of his interview with the president? That's what the chairs of these three powerful House committees, chairs Jordan, Comer, and Smith, they wrote to A.G. Garland saying, release the interview transcript between special counsel Robert Hur and President Biden by next Monday. I mean, we broke it last night, Mollie. Then Vice President Biden took home from the Obama White House the daily briefing books with U.S. secrets. He took home notes from the Obama Situation Room on the CIA director and senior military officials, quote, views of a foreign terrorist organization. He had SCIF top secret information at his home. The National Archives indicating he never returned anything. And now there's questions about his acuity.
Well, and, when you put it that way, too, the acuity is the least of the problems there. We have a Department of Justice that has just explained that there was willful mishandling of classified information, not from when he was president and had declassification authority, but from when he was a senator, vice president, when he was trying to make money off of book sales. So we have that at the same time that the Department of Justice is running roughshod over any kind of norm or rule of law in an attempt to imprison Donald Trump for how he handled classified information when he was president. And so these things are so much bigger than just the mental problems that Biden is having that we all see. The Department of Justice should last longer than either President Biden or President Trump, and it has done such a bad job of upholding its own integrity because of the uneven way in which it prosecutes different issues. issues.
Got it. Mollie Hemingway, thanks for joining us on the show
Thank you.
tonight. It's good to see you. Still ahead,